Vlad the Impaler is one of the most memorable figures in all history, but for all the wrong reasons. His penchant for having people impaled is, of course, truly ghastly, but to make matters even worse, this wasn't the only form of execution Vlad used. Stories circulated about different methods of execution that Vlad concocted, which were all cruel in the most inhumane way. Although it does have to be said that some of these stories are grossly exaggerated and others completely false. Vlad slaughtered over 20,000 Ottoman Turks and even nearly killed their Sultan, Mehmed II. And it wasn't just prisoners of war Vlad targeted. Men, women, young and old were victims of his brutality. Here we'll look at some of the stories told that detailed Vlad's cruelty. In many of them, his viciousness seemed to be born on a whim, as perfectly innocent people fell victim to his rage. However, it does have to be reiterated that some of these stories were written by Vlad's enemies a few years after his death, so we have to take it all with a pinch of salt. Whilst some of the tales are clearly false, or at least heavily embellished, other cases are, sadly, historically proven. Gaining control of Wallachia in 1456, Vlad had villages across Transylvania burned to the ground, with men, women, and children all perishing. Some of the survivors were brought back and allegedly impaled. It was said that Vlad then had 400 young boys, all from noble families, sent to his land to learn the language, burned alive. Vlad was also not averse to using psychological torture. Some ambassadors that had been sent to him from Hungary and surrounding regions were kept in lodgings filled with large wooden stakes, evidently for their impalement in case of some treachery on their part. The envoys were kept in this fearful state for some weeks. Vlad's depravity seemed to know no bounds, and one particularly malicious act was when he held a funeral service for one of his victims when he was still alive. Vlad made the man dig his own grave before he had him beheaded. On another occasion, Vlad had a gypsy arrested for stealing, and he ordered the man's fellow travellers to hang him. When they refused, the thief was boiled alive in a pot, whilst the rest were ordered to eat his flesh. When some Italian ambassadors arrived in Vlad's lands, they greeted him by removing their hats, although leaving their caps on underneath. When Vlad asked why this was, they said it was simply their custom. In response, Vlad nailed the caps to their head. One of Vlad's mistresses then told him she was pregnant. When this was found not to be the case, he had her disemboweled. Aside from these grisly executions, Vlad is also said to have roasted and flayed people alive. But of course, impalement remains the execution that Vlad is most famous for. On one occasion, after attacking Transylvania, Vlad took the ordinary citizens of one town and had them impaled. He then sat down to enjoy his lunch in the midst of such terrible suffering. Vlad's brutality left even experienced men of war flabbergasted. Mehmed II and his Ottomans were on the march against Vlad when they stumbled on a truly horrifying sight. Thousands upon thousands of Ottoman men, women, and children impaled on wooden stakes. Mehmed was said to have been stunned at what he saw. Nonetheless, Vlad is and was regarded by many as being a strong ruler, a capable military leader, and a man who took a particularly hard line against his enemies. And it may be that this last factor is why so many stories of Vlad's incredible violence circulated after his death. Through my own choice, I have omitted certain details from the accounts describing Vlad's deeds. Those details are particularly revolting, and one can only hope they are indeed the imaginings of somebody with an agenda against Vlad, but given what we do know, it can hardly be discounted as being true either. I apologise if these last few sentences sound vague, but there is a level of gore I will not describe on any of my social media platforms. Given that I've relayed some horrifying tales anyway, this will give the listener or viewer an idea of how gruesome these extracts actually are. Vlad the Impaler, was he a complete monster or simply a man defending his people? This is a topic I will discuss in a later video.